we get to start not how we were planning to start today. We have to start, absolutely must start, in College Station, Texas, with a historic comeback for Texas A&M. Garrett, I'll just share how I took in this game today, because I think we don't want to spend a ton of time on this one. If you watch the show, you know that we are fans of Texas A&M, so we have to just share our emotions on this game, kind of have a therapy session, honestly, about it. Because, listen, man, I showed up to a tailgate on campus at A&M about 8:30 this morning. Everything was going great, man. Like, the vibes, I don't think had ever been higher on campus at A&M. I've been to a lot of games at Kyle Field. No one all week in the media in College Station was even considering the possibility that A&M would lose this game. Like, no one was considering it. Everybody just going on to Samford and then going on to Texas, penciling us in, sharping us in at 11-0. And boy, do the Gamecocks have other ideas, and Shane Beamer especially, as you listen to him in that mid-quarter interview. But the short of it is, if you've already forgotten from the 11 a.m. slate this morning, Texas A&M falls down 30-3 at halftime, storms back, scores 28 unanswered points in the second half, almost gives up the game again in the fourth quarter with a fumble on the goal line when they were trying to go up 38-30, and then gets a couple clutch sacks to close it out and hold on for dear life to win and go 10-0 for the first time since 1992. I just found myself speechless after this game, Garrett, and I've been really trying to collect my thoughts about this game. Have some numbers that I want to throw out there here in a little bit as well, but what were your thoughts as the roller coaster of this game unfolded?
Y'all got nervous? What are you talking about, man? I was never in doubt. All right. We've seen this team pull through in the clutch. No, seriously. That was remarkable. Honestly, like, just on the emotional side of it, right? Yeah, as a fan, when you're watching it, you want to see your team do all right. The first couple, scores for South Carolina go through, you're like, yeah, it's fine. We're gonna be all right. There's no problem here. I've seen this team battle and compete. There's only so much that you can do wrong before you start to say, hey, this may just not be our day. Like, we just maybe didn't have this one today. And that's what it started to feel like at a certain point. At a certain point, there's only so many, you get the big pick that goes back down towards the goal line, and then it sets you up for first and goal inside the 10, and you're ready to go. And then you can't come away with any points. You drop a touchdown pass, doink the field goal off of the upright, and you're feeling like you're right back in it. You get the ball back, you drive back down, you throw a pick in the end zone, then you immediately let up a touchdown to the net. I mean, at a certain point, you're just like, what could more? And I said this, both in our group text and to some of the people I was watching the game with. A&M made every mistake you could possibly make in the first half. It was everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It's hard to think of, as a football watcher, fan, knower. It's hard to think of a thing that you could have added into the pile in the first half that could have gone worse. And there was no room for error. And fortunately, in the second half, that was about as perfect a game as you can play. Marcel Reed looked fantastic in the second half. There's a lot to be said about him and his performance. A lot to be said about that defense and what they were able to do in the second half as well, kind of shutting it down and saying, like, don't worry, we will give you the opportunity to pull this one off on the offensive side. And like, man, just what a team win in that second half. Something I don't think we'll ever see anything close to. That feels almost like, from the football gods, that was payback for that UCLA game back in 2017, where we had to watch our team fall apart down the stretch. Now we get to watch our team not fall apart, and instead it was the other guys falling apart, and we pulled off the big comeback.
Here, just to put this into perspective, man, like, the numbers have been rolling in all day. You've probably seen these on Twitter, but since 2004, SEC teams in SEC play that fell down by 27 plus were 0-286. That's not great odds,
That's
Garrett. They
not
are now
fantastic.
1-286. The first half was just, like you said, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong for A&M. It was a true Murphy's Law situation. South Carolina was outgaining A&M at halftime 312-132. You mentioned the turnovers. Marcel Reed, a couple of interceptions. Outrushing A&M 108 to -9 at halftime. It was bad, and I was going through it, honestly. Like, we can talk about just what this means bigger picture here in a second, but you start spiraling when your team finds themselves in that situation. We have the battered Aggie syndrome, of course, and so many other things that we can pull back on, but you're starting to think, like, man, the committee's going to hate this showing. If we lose to Texas and Austin, like we might fall out of this whole thing. I texted you guys. I think we're out if we don't shape up and we lose to Texas and Austin. Like that is a terrible last taste to give the committee. But then everything changes, right? Marcel Reed becomes a completely different player in the second half. He's 16 of 20 for 298 and 3 touchdowns. Overall, he threw for 439 and 3 touchdowns. So all of them in the second half there. It was his new career high. His previous high was 361 back in his first appearance, again, in the Texas Bowl against Oklahoma State a couple years ago. And then the defense, really. I think that's the unsung heroes of the second half for Texas A&M, right? Because that's what it took. It wasn't going to just be coming back by getting scores. You had to get the stops, too. In the second half, A&M's defense shut out the Gamecocks, allowed just 76 yards. That equates to 2.9 yards per play and 4 sacks, including a couple of huge ones with the Gamecocks having the ball with a chance to kick a field goal to win there at the end. But, I mean, you can slice this up 7 ways to Sunday. You talk about just the Aggie jokes were writing themselves. The comeback becomes just this epic statement, I think, for Texas A&M that, hey, we're not going to let this be like previous years. I think the narrative would have 1,000% been had they not even completed the comeback or given up the field goal on that last drive, right? The narrative 1,000% would have been, this is the same old A&M, doesn't matter. They're benefiting from a soft schedule, and that may play out to be true. But those guys in that locker room, at least for one more week, are saying, hey, this is a different team, and this is going to be a different ending to the season than you've seen time and time before at Texas A&M.
Well, and it could also be true that, this team is actually a very good football team, and that what today showed is they have that kind of DNA. And then it turns out that at the end of the year, they still get beat by someone who's also just a good football team, right? Like maybe they make it into the playoff, make a bit of a run, lose to Indiana or Ohio State or someone like that. That's also a possibility, right? There's a chance that maybe, yes, it's been kind of a weaker schedule. There's a chance that it's weaker because you're beating everybody, right? That's also a part of it, is all those teams have a loss in their, column because of you. At the end of the day, I think uh, there's a lot of people who are going to want to make a lot of this. There's a lot of people that are going to want to make a lot of the fact that, South Carolina was 3-6 and only has one conference win, the whole thing. And I'd like you to keep the same energy that you did last week when we saw Indiana do the heroics against Penn State. I just keep the same energy, right? If you were impressed by that, be impressed by that. And if you were like me and you criticized that, then like, look, it's my team, so I'm happy they won, but I'm not going to sit here and say this is a fantastic win. All right. This is not, amazing. This is not immaculate, but if that was a Fernando Mendoza Heisman moment, then this is a Marcel Reed Heisman moment, right? If this was, the moment where Indiana proved that they're for real and they can dig deep and win a game when they're not supposed to, well, then this was the same thing for Texas A&M. Okay, you can't delineate between the two things. Right now, it's Ohio State and it's everybody else. Ohio State's best team currently in the country, but it's a gap. But then there's a lot of teams that are still competing. I think this shows that Texas A&M belongs in that conversation, not because they beat 3-7 South Carolina, but because they pulled off this comeback. Not a lot of teams would have the ability to do something like that. You can say they put themselves in that position, but they still pulled themselves out, right? And that's, I think, a big deal for this team, for the culture, for the win. And if A&M does go on to reach their goals this season, if they do go on to achieve great things this season, a lot of people are going to look back at this game as a pivotal moment when it was absolutely in doubt. Your season was dead and over, and you found a way to resurrect it, bring it back to life, and pull something together.
I think as we close out talking about this game, and I'm sure there will be so much more to that comes up about it, and just I can't wait to watch the Pulse this week and see the halftime speech that Elko gave, because that's going to be incredible. But as you project forward now, A&M, according to the All-State playoff predictor, actually has a 100% chance of making the college football playoff. So it's not a question of if they'll get in.
This.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody could figure out how to mess that up, it would be Texas A&M. But they have Samford next week. They will get to 11 wins, regardless of what happens in Austin. I think that game is more about keeping the Longhorns out than and protecting your seeding and obviously getting to the SEC championship. But as you project forward, as you think about that game against Texas, as you think about a potential SEC championship and then a run in the playoff, what has you most concerned about the Aggies right now? What if you could boil down to one thing, has you concerned that they won't reach a championship ceiling?
I think the big thing that has me concerned about Texas A&M is that they still haven't found a way to put together a full effort for 4 quarters in a game this year. I have not yet seen them put together good offense and good defense for 4 straight quarters in a resounding win. Against a good team, against a bad team, winning by 10 points, winning by 30 points, whatever it is, I still haven't really seen that, right? You look at every single big moment for A&M, and they've had some big ones, and they've won by big margins, and they've been dominant against teams who, we later want to discredit, but there's always that moment, right? You can look at the, last game against Missouri, right? You didn't really start very fast on offense. You left a lot of points on the table in the first half. Okay, go back and look at the game against LSU. That second quarter was atrocious. Look back at Arkansas. You didn't play good defense. Look at Florida. You didn't start the game well on defense, right? And then you kind of slowed down all of a sudden. You can go back through the entire schedule and start to look at all the moments where they found ways to not necessarily play their best football. That's not going to fly against the best of the best, right? I think there's a lot of teams that you can beat just playing 3 quarters of your best football, falling asleep at the wheel for one of them. There's a lot of teams you can beat just having a good offense or just having a good defense or, kind of being okay at both. But when you get to the top and you're thinking about teams like Ohio State and Indiana, those teams are not going to get beat because you showed up with a B+ game somewhere. You have to bring your A game. You have to be able to show up and do that. Currently, if I'm going to pick, against A&M, it's going to be because, hey, I don't think that they can pull up and do that, for 4 quarters, right? If there's a team that show me they can be dominant for 4 quarters, I'm going to go with that team as opposed to the Aggies right now.
Let me unmute myself first, but I'm with you on that. I think it's really concerning that we are 10 weeks into the season and we still haven't seen that, right? The closest I could say that you saw that was the Missouri game, but even then the offense took a while to get going. It's really concerning when you think about that. For me, it's the big plays though. And I think that this defense is one that it's really difficult to string long drives together. We've talked about that a lot, but when you're getting an 80-yard touchdown pass, or it's just a given that you're going to give up a 45-yard run and they're probably going to score on that drive, it's just really hard to see this defense sustaining that and not getting worn out against a better team, against an Indiana or an Ohio State or someone in the SEC championship. So the warts are there. They are what they are at this point. I don't know how much you can do to really fix that. Maybe you can tune it up against Samford. Maybe you get a big performance going into the playoff against Texas or in the SEC championship that gets you feeling that way. But the bottom line is, Garrett, they're winning in spite of those things. And when one side of the ball has a bad half, the other side steps up, right? Or when the whole team has a bad half, like they did today, everybody ups their game in the second half and just does what it takes to win. So that's what I'm most encouraged about, doing the little interview trick there where you flip the negative into the positive.
There you go.
That's what I'm most encouraged about, is they find multiple ways to win. And when one side or one player or one position group is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, everybody else tends to pick them up eventually.
The good news for A&M is this hasn't been the case yet, but if you want to go find another possible issue, I think the kicking game needs a lot of work because, man, like if you're telling me that, Marcel Reed's going to be able to lead a drive against Texas late in that game in Austin, and they're going to be down a single point, and you can set up a 35-yard field goal. There's no part of me that loves that situation. No part of me wants to rely on any type of field goal right now out of a place kicker at Texas A&M. I don't understand what's going on there. I don't know why you can't get a kicking game right. Put him in the facility and tell him he can't leave till he hits 100 in a row. I don't know what you got to do. Like, you got to find a way to kick the football. I understand if it's, missing 50 yarders or like, getting in his head for a second, but it's like, man, when you're doinking it from, 20 something, that's just no good. Like, you can't do that. And in a game which, again, like we said, came down to the wire and all they needed was a field goal at the end to go up. You would have loved those 2 field goals from earlier in the game. Now, obviously, that doesn't matter if you guys are dropping passes, throwing picks in the end zone, the whole thing. So, that's not like it was the main problem today was the kicking, but that could be a main problem that ends up holding A&M back down the stretch.
Yeah, good point on that. That's so true, and it has been a problem for a good chunk of the year. Like I said, A&M 2 more games in the regular season: Samford and Texas, and then if they beat Texas, they will be. It's looking like, we'll get into the SEC standings here in a little bit, but it's looking like it's a win and you're in the SEC championship against Texas. Lose and you're probably the odd man out. But we'll see. So still so much to be decided.